everyone, Jen here. I'm the founder and executive director of the Muddy Pug Farm and Sanctuary outside of Maple Valley, Washington. And we are kicking off a new series where we're going to go chapter by chapter of the book, One Day I Want to Have a Farm Sanctuary, by the amazing team at the Cloven Heart Farm Sanctuary. And I think that this book is so incredibly important to talk about, not just what the team at Cloven Heart covers in that book, but also what our experience has been, what my experience has been in doing this work of the sanctuary. And the first chapter of the book is called There Is a Lot of Crying in the Sanctuary. And I can certainly attest to, you look at this beautiful setting and you think, oh my gosh, you have just the most idyllic life. You live in this beautiful farm. It's so peaceful. You get to be with animals all day. But what no one tells you that you really need to understand before you go into this work is that it is the most brutally relentless work that you could do. It takes a toll on you physically, it takes a toll on you mentally, it takes a toll on you emotionally. And even for someone like me, who I consider myself to be pretty tough, I am not a crier. Even I cry because of this work. And this work is tough emotionally for so many reasons. Within the work of the sanctuary, you find yourself caring for animals that can come from terrible situations. So you may have a resident that comes in that has been neglected, and you have to manage all of the emotions, the sadness, the anger, the resolve, to help this helpless animal who was treated in a terrible way and get them to a point of healing, even though they or you had nothing to do with the reason that they were neglected or abused. We, for example, took in a neglect case of 3 feathered friends, a tom turkey that we named Abby, a female turkey that we named Rose, and then a beautiful Peking duck named Felice. And both Abby and Felice died because of what happened to them on the homestead that they were at prior to coming to us. Abby died within days because of the neglect that he faced. Felice was taking a turn for the better, and she needed to have one simple operation in order to help her recovery, and she passed away under anesthesia. And Rose is the only one of the 3 that moved to a happy and peaceful life, and she lives with our friends on the Ballydidion sanctuary. And so I say that as an example so that you understand that you are going to come into contact and have to deal with and manage residents who come from horrific situations. And just seeing that, just experiencing that, dealing with the helplessness of that is going to be very upsetting, and it's going to take an emotional toll. And that is just the mechanics of getting a resident to a state of wellness in terms of you interacting with that resident. There is a whole other side of that equation that is a financial equation. And if you think that you feel hopeless trying to help a neglected or abandoned animal get well, you should also lay on top of that trying to pay for a neglected, abandoned, or abused animal to get well. And to use the example of Abby, Rose, and Felice, we spent, roughly $10,000 to $12,000 between aggressive antibiotic regimens. Rose had to have a toe amputated. Felice had to have IV infusions multiple times. And when all was said and done, we were only really able to save one of the 3 of that group. And not only is it a challenge to manage those situations, the stress, the sheer stress of trying to raise funds or to pull from your personal finances to finance the care that's needed for the residents can feel like an incredibly hopeless situation. You should be eyes wide open that people who are vegan and people who care about farmed animals are very few and far between. And so for sanctuaries to have regular, consistent funding to do this level of work is incredibly challenging. I myself, I work a day job where I probably work a 50-hour work week consistently, but it does help me to finance the majority of work that you see here, the work that we do. And when you think about the emotional toll, the financial toll that takes an emotional toll is something that you should be very aware of. There are also other situations that are going to come up that are going to be really upsetting for you. As a sanctuary community, we often face a lot of judgment for how we care for animals or the extent that we go to care for animals. There is Monday morning quarterbacks are very thick on the ground. You face a lot of criticism for what you do, for what you don't do. And that takes its toll because this work is really hard and you would want people to be very supportive of you, and there are wonderfully supportive people for the sanctuary community. There's also a lot of haters, and that takes a lot of emotional energy to sort of manage that and to compartmentalize it and to not let it slow you down or affect you. And so hopefully that gives you a sense of what it takes in terms of the emotional toll of doing the work of the sanctuary. The physical toll of doing work on the sanctuary can also impact how you're feeling emotionally. I'll just use an example for myself. I am, at the time of this recording, I'm almost 50, if you can believe it. I'm 50 years old, doing all this farm work, a lot of it by myself, and the toll that it takes on you physically, it is relentless. You have to be just as strong in body as you are in mind, and certainly sanctuaries manage that to some extent by having a group of volunteers to help them. But if you don't have volunteers to fill in, all day, every day, you should expect to do the heaviest of heavy physical labor that you have ever done in your life. Like, our hay bales weigh 125 pounds. They weigh as much as I do. I have to sling those around and move them around the sanctuary. I have to muck the stalls. I have to move gravel. I have to dig holes. All of that is something that you should be able to do, and you should be able to do consistently almost every day. Which brings me to my last and final point about managing a sanctuary and just the emotional toll of managing a sanctuary, is that all of these things that may take a physical cost to you, a financial cost to you, an emotional cost to you, a spiritual cost to you, I think sometimes the hardest thing that we deal with on the sanctuary is that you give so much to this place, to the sanctuary that you're working in. You give everything you have to your residents. You give everything you have to the community that you serve. And even with all of that, the sanctuary doesn't care or love you back. And I say that laughingly because I agree that the residents are very loving, the community can be very caring, but there is a relentlessness to the work of the sanctuary that never stops. So this morning, I was up at 4:15 this morning. I didn't sleep very well because I have some stuff going on in my personal life, and the sanctuary doesn't care about that. I still have to get up at 4:15 in the morning. I still have to get up and make sure that everyone's fed. I still have to, because it's a weekend here as I'm recording this, so I'm managing the sanctuary on my own. I am still responsible to do all the work of the sanctuary. And as an example, for extra fun today, we found out that our barn has a burrowing pest in it, and so the barn has to be retrofitted to the tune of $5,000. And in addition to doing all of the farm work today, I ended up spraining my ankle doing that work, and I still had to do that work. I've been working for let's see, it's 4:15, it's 5:35 p.m. as I'm recording this, so I've worked almost 13 hours today on a sprained ankle with lots going on in my personal life, and the sanctuary doesn't care. And you have to be okay with the relentless pace of the sanctuary. You either have to be just forged of steel, and or you have to have an amazing support system of people that you can call, that you have volunteers that can help you. If you are super fortunate that you are married and your spouse is invested in doing this work with you, you should give them many thanks. But this can be just a brutal pace that is very, very difficult to sustain. And so even when you're feeling bad, even when you want to cry, even when you want to give up, what really separates the women from the boys, sorry boys, but let's be honest, most of the people that manage sanctuaries are women anyway, so they won't be offended by this. What really separates the women from the boys is that you can keep going no matter what is going on. So yes, emotionally taxing, you will cry doing this work, it will be very upsetting to you. And if you're someone that can make sense of that, that can process that, that has the support system for that, you might be ready to have a sanctuary. If you're listening to me talking and you're like, holy shit, I really don't think I'm that tough, then you should stop and go volunteer at a sanctuary for a long period of time to really see what it's like and what it demands before you take the next step to having a sanctuary. So much love, so much gratitude to all of my sanctuary people that do this work day in and day out. Huge shout out to the Muddy Pug team who helps me to run this sanctuary, and our wonderful group of volunteers. We could not do this work without you. See you at the next chapter.